Welcome to Identity Church Sunday Morning Message, where sonship is revealed. Stay tuned at the end of this message to receive more information about resources available through Identity Church. Now grab your Bible, sit back, and enjoy a message from Identity Church that is already in progress.
I want you to stand up. I want you to do something. I want you to point to the north and go, Hallelujah! Point to the west. Hallelujah! Point to the south. Hallelujah! Point to the east. Hallelujah! Sometimes you just got to get up and shout. That was north, west, southeast, something like that. Whatever. It was close. It was close. I got a friend of mine in Portal, Georgia, who Portal. You know him? Reddick? Lynn Reddick? Not Tim Mather. Lynn. Anyway, he tells a story where the father was praying for his son. He'd been praying for years for his kid. His kid was on drugs and lost and gone, and he was frustrated. He said, God, I'm tired of praying about it. He said, why don't you just go out in the yard and tell him to come home? And he pointed to the north, the south, the east, the west. Called him by name. Said, come home! 3 days later, he knocked on his dad's door. He says, Dad, I was in a drug craziness. And a wind blew across the desert in Arizona. I swear I heard your voice. He said, come home. You know, sometimes you just got to call them home. I've been that kid at the edge of the neighborhood and heard the voice. Oh, no, I'm late. You know that voice. You know, sometimes we know the voice. We need to hear the voice. Come home. Doesn't matter where you're at, what you're into. When you hear the voice, come home. You know you're received when you get there. And that's our Father. And I think if we would start acting like a father and quit belly aching and wanting everything right before they come home, just know that there'll be a reception when they get there. The title of my message is The Older Shall Serve the Younger. I am completely undone today. I listened and read a book for over 10 hours yesterday on terrorism. I am completely convinced that God is about to flip things upside down if his people will catch what he's doing. You know, I've been reading books. Tea with Terrorist. I'm studying terrorist. Son of Hamas, which his father was one of the seven founding members of the Hamas. But he found some Christians in Jerusalem at a Bible study at a coffee shop, and he got wrecked and met Jesus and became a spy for the Israeli government and saved thousands of lives as a Christian. But when he wanted to get out of the terrorist business because he had a heart change, he didn't have nowhere to go. And I think sometimes that we as Christians, that we want to get out of the legalistic system, we have no place to go. That was a good word, Chuck. Thank you. And so I read this book yesterday. It wrecked me. It's called American Radical. It's about an FBI agent that came from Egypt when he was 5 years old, became an American citizen when he was 10. His mother spoke to him in Arabic. His father taught him the Muslim faith. His mother lived the Muslim faith. And he became an FBI informant, infiltrated the terrorist cells. And I show you these books in the book I read yesterday. And I'm going to tell you, the terrorist has an ability that is better than Christians to love your brother. There is a bond among terrorists that it's about the brotherhood. Now, it's warped, but there's something, they got something on us when it comes to that. So I was up last night finishing that book, and I'm looking for these books, and I find this one here, The Life and Story of William Branham. He's a modern-day prophet who, interesting, like Osama bin Laden, had an encounter with God in a cave. Isn't it amazing that terrorists and wounded prophets many times start off in caves? And I believe God is trying to heal the sloppy cave living of his prophets and put them in the proper place in the body to where we're usable. But if we don't start loving each other as brothers, they're going to stay wounded, we're going to stay wounded, and we will lose our influence, and someone will take our seat of authority. That was good, because I wasn't on any of my messages here. I want you to go back and listen to last Wednesday's message. I preached on Romans chapter 5. The first 5 verses of Romans is about grace. How many need grace, have grace, and love grace? Yeehaw! My wife's mother, her name was Grace. Susie's middle name is Grace. My mother's name was Grace. And it's amazing grace. We'll just leave it there. But the first 5 chapters of Romans is about grace. The 6th chapter is about dying. It's like he gave all this grace stuff and all this grace stuff, and all of a sudden he slams into, oh my gosh, if I don't put a balance or a rail here, people are going to take grace beyond its boundaries and live in a lifestyle that would be ungodly. So he goes into this whole death thing about surrender, get rid of your flesh, walk in the Spirit, and it's all about death. And then in chapter 7, after the death process is over, he talks about coming out from the law, walking in grace. He says, here's what he tells a story about a married woman is bound by the law to her husband while he lives. But if her husband dies, she's released from the law of marriage. According, she will be called an adulteress if she lives with another man while her husband is alive. So I'm telling you, as I'm reading that, and I did a pretty good job Wednesday. Go look it on YouTube, on our website. But listen, the bottom line is this: if you're not going to surrender and die to your flesh, then you won't be able to marry Christ properly. This last week he said to me, he says, I'm not into threesomes. Someone has to die. And it's not, he said, I already done it once. I'm not doing it again. So who's dying? Why do you think he gives you a big sword to fight the enemy and he gives you a small dagger to stab yourself? Okay, that was good, but some of you need to do it. And Colossians 2 says, for you to mortify the deeds of the flesh. And we keep asking Jesus to come to do something he's told us to do. And it's called surrender. So then you get into this marriage thing, and really, if you keep looking at it, I swear, I'm reading marriage, chapter 7, it's about, if you'll die to this, then you can marry him. And then he goes on for about 47 verses about how you're wrestling with your old man. I'm like, that's my marriage. Where's my wife? Is she back there? Oh, man, she's here. But do you understand marriage is when the two become one? It's a death process because you don't get to exist on your own anymore. And then you get some idiot husband that goes, submit to me, woman. And my wife crossed that word out of her Bible. She said, it's the S word. And it wasn't sex, it was submit. She crossed it out and she wrote yield in love. I'm not submitting to a knucklehead, but I'll submit to someone I know that loves me. Amen. Thank you. That was good. So even in the same chapter of marrying is this wrestling match, because when we become one, it's still my reputation, it's still my ego, it's still who and what and blah, 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 instead of our vision and our purpose. And us being one, marrying him. It was interesting that, and I called Ron and told him my new revelation on Romans 8. So you go from 5 chapters of grace, 1 chapter of death, 1 chapter of marriage, and then those who are led by the Spirit are the sons of God. So when you have a good marriage, you have a reproduction of being son. Catch this. If the old man has died and you've married the new Christ, you'll reproduce your own sonship. Now listen. As I walk in my own sonship, my elder brother serves me. Jesus, in his life on earth and his principles, is serving me and teaching me who the Father is. He's presenting me as his brother to the Father so I can come into my identity as a son. Now, there's levels of sons, and I'm telling you, some of us are just catching sonship. When I had tested Papa Jack and wanted to know why how his fathering would stay pure, I saw an 84-year-old find another 87-year-old or an old man to father him. Why? Because he pursued his own sonship to keep his fathering pure. And when you find these guys that have arrived and they're not pursuing their sonship, they become crazy. They're building the wrong kingdom. Nobody can tell them they're wrong. Nobody can challenge their belief. The older will serve the younger. It's amazing that in Genesis 25, Rebecca's pregnant with twins, and she's saying, hey, if this is the favor of God, why is this miserable? Because you got 2 nations in your belly, baby. And they're fighting, and they ain't even out yet. It's our nature to fight something. Why? Because we were created to have dominion. So it's our nature to have dominion. It's our nature to fight. But the question is, what are you surrendered to so your fight is right? If you're not surrendered, your fight won't be right. Because you'll start fighting for your rights and walk past righteousness. David was chosen over 7 of his brothers. Jacob was chosen over Esau. Gideon was the youngest of his family. Solomon was chosen, and he had older brothers that fought for their position. Ephraim was blessed over Manasseh, and Manasseh was the oldest. And it said Ephraim would be greater than Manasseh. What do you do when the prophecy comes and the one you've been walking with and you've been caring for gets the prophecy and it sounds like they're going to be greater than you? Do you rejoice or do you undermine? Oh, that sounds good on paper. Yeah, I call that lip service. I'm reading these books about terrorists. I'm reminded that I had a vision, an encounter with God several years ago. I went back to some of the writings. And Jesus was standing on this hill, and I was standing next to him, and he was being prideful. Jesus was just cocky. I know your Jesus doesn't do that. My Jesus does. And he's like, check out my belt of truth. I'm like, I got one of those too, baby. And we're just kind of going back and forth. And he says, yeah, but look at my buckle versus yours. And his belt of truth, it was tied and it looked like a heart, a bow. He says, look at your buckle of truth. And it was a metal device, and I had hidden explosives inside my buckle. He said, the difference is my truth is buckled with love. And if someone challenges your truth, you'll blow them up, and you're willing to blow yourself up if they disagree. And he said, you are a terrorist. That was a real nice encounter with Jesus that day. What do you do when Jesus says you're a terrorist? You start finding out, what truthful boundary did I cross that I was willing to die for versus willing to kill for? See, when you find a truth and you apply it to your life, you'll have to surrender to the truth, and it will actually bring that death process in you. But if you're actually unwilling to love, you'll murder someone else because you've anchored yourself in what you thought was a truth and not him. So if you can't love by your standard, you can't live by it either. Did you hear that? If you cannot love by your standard, he won't let you live by it either. And the problem is we've taken what we believe is our truth. And yes, there's truth in it, but we've been unwilling to become a beloved son. Only a son who has truth, and we're competing with our brothers. You know, I mean, Ron says that when Rodney was praying over us that things we do in hiddenness, he's like, I see it. Well, he's a gift there. What truth does he know? Listen, you prophetic people. If God is showing you something about somebody, take it to intercession before you run your trap. Love your brother enough to buckle the truth that he showed you in love and be willing to walk the process. I love prophetic people, but you're a pain in the rump sometimes because you think you know everything. Don't take it personal, Ron. I love you, brother. What did he say to Cain? What did he say to Cain? He puts out this whole thing about sacrifice, and Cain does his little sacrifice, and Abel does his sacrifice, and God receives Abel's sacrifice, and he rejects Cain's. Cain gets mad about it because he didn't fulfill the requirement. God wanted a blood sacrifice. He wanted the second generation from Adam and Eve to understand that when Adam and Eve had sinned, he killed an innocent animal and covered them. He didn't want produce. He didn't want vegetables. He didn't want the best Cain had. He wanted an innocent animal to be sacrificed. What it was forcing Cain and Abel to do was to work together. And Cain says, no, I'll give you the best of my vegetables. I'll give you the best of my fruit. And if that's not acceptable, I'll get mad and I'll kill him. Why did God want an animal? Because he was starting the pattern of being the lamb. And you go from the fathering generation to the son generation, and they missed it in the first one. What they should have done is Cain should have said to Abel, I got some really good vegetables. I need a lamb. What they should have done is work together. Why? For the requirement of the Father, the requirement of God, but they couldn't work together. I gave the best I can, and God didn't like it. Now I'm going to kill you. But why? The best that he had was produced out of the earth that was cursed. You can't use a curse to remove a curse unless you're Jesus himself. So why do you want to kill your brother? Oh, they're Methodists. Oh, they're Baptists. Oh, they're black. Oh, they're white. Oh, they're Asian. They got that little red dot. I don't like them either. They drive slow in the left lane. I was telling Kingdom School, my terrorist spirit came out on the way to church this morning. Get out of my way. I want to kill you. So here's, you're speaking in tongues back there. Listen. Listen. How can you say you love God who you can't see when you don't even love your brother who you do see? The problem is I can't, because I'm not looking at my brother as it made in the image of God. She's made in the image of my adversary. She's made in the image of the one that hurt me. She looks just like my older sister, by the way. Anyway, actually carries some of the same names of the family. What is your response? What is your trigger? What is your trigger? Yeah, but you go by Pamela. She goes by Pam. So, no, what is it? What triggers you? What wound speaks louder than truth? What wound speaks louder than love? What prejudgment or what judgment have you judged a whole culture, a whole society, a whole group because you were offended or wounded? In 5th grade, I got in trouble because I had a crush on a 5'8", pretty little black girl. And little white boys in my community weren't allowed to like little black girls. But I had a crush on this one. And so being in 5th grade, we threw rocks at each other. That was our love language. So Gwendolyn come around the corner and I got kicked out of my class and I'm sitting in the hallway in my chair. And she saw that and she threw a rock at me. So I went and got it and I threw it back at her and I got caught throwing it at her by another African-American teacher. And I made this statement. She threw the rock at me first. I was just that colored girl. And this adult started mocking me. Colored girl? Well, somewhere along the line, a memo had been sent out publicly that the African Americans did not want to be called colored anymore. But I was a little Southern boy, and that was respectful. And she mocked me and drugged me down to the dean's office, who was another African American, and they both mocked me. And from that moment on, I said, "Don't worry. Every time I see a person of color, you'll be called a." He beat me within an inch of my life. But from that moment on, my offense turned into full-blown racism. That's what it grew from. What has offended you to discard a whole group of brothers and sisters? Because you're unwilling to let your older brother serve you and wash you and cleanse you so that you can find the Father become a real son. Do you know the Last Supper? Just before he's going to the cross, the Passover lamb. I believe it's Mark 14, Luke 22, and Matthew something. It's interesting that all three of those don't include the part of John. Let's read John. Susie, put up John 13, 1 through 17. That would be you, Susan. I found her. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out. All right, we're not following her anymore. I'm getting my own. Chapter 13, verse 1. Of this world to where? So he knows that he's about to be crucified to go back to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, when the devil had already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given him all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going back to God. He had come from God and was going back from God. My question to you, do you believe you're from God? He said he knew you before you were in your mother's womb, so you had to have come from him originally. He is light and he is life. So what in you got regenerated was from him from the beginning. Rose from supper, he laid aside his outer garment and taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? Jesus answered him, what I am doing, you do not understand now. Next. But afterward you will understand. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. How many have said, Jesus is such my Savior. Jesus is such my Messiah. He will never I will never let him wash my feet. See, we've gotten so religious, we won't let Christ wash us. We've gotten so religious, we won't let him get close enough to us to serve us what he's already given us. If I do not wash you, you have no share with me. In other words, you can't share who I am if you won't let me wash you. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Jesus said to him, the one who has bathed does not need to wash except for his feet. Let me tell you something. Some of the washing you need to do yourself. But before you start branching out and being the one who carries the gospel to others, you need to let him wash you. Because wounded people wound people. Dirty people. You've got to be cleaned in the place of your feet. There's something about the feet, the walk of God, the character of God, the nature of God, carrying the gospel. Blessed are the feet of those who bring the gospel. The good news. Next. And you are clean, but not every one of you. Ha! You know, he's looking around this table. He knows he's got a devil there. Some of you, if you let him wash you, maybe the devil would come out of you. For he knew who was about to betray him. That was why he said, not all of you are clean. When he had washed their feet and put on his outer garment and resumed his place, he said to them, do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for this I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. What good is it to know it and not do it? And sat with some people in the last couple of weeks. I do regional stuff. Pennsylvania, New York. Looks like more in Louisiana than I want. Cajuns are crazy, man. They're whacked. Jesus, I hope they're not watching. But it's a culture. I'm not used to some of that. They eat stuff for breakfast that boudin. What the heck is boudin? Don't put that in front of me. You got to put enough hot sauce on it to cover it. So what am I doing? I'm shooting at their culture because I don't understand it. I guarantee you, as fat as I am, I stay there long enough, I'd start loving it. But you're going to have to sit at the table and eat it for a while. Listen, What good is it for you to know it and not do it? I got these regional guys, and I told a story about, I was going back up to Pennsylvania area, and this big shot prophet heard that I was coming, and he puts out to a bunch of the guys, I am the regional prophet. I've been here since 1969. Who's this punk coming into our city? So I'm like, that's a nice letter, nice email. Why don't you give him a call and tell him when I'll be there, and we'll have lunch. And so I sit down to lunch with this guy. He's the big shot. I'm the new guy. I know God sent me. I know who I am. The problem is I didn't love him as a brother. I thought he was competition. Here's what you do when you believe it's competition. You know you've been sent. You know who you are. The problem is they don't know who you are, so you don't wash his feet. You offend them. So I said, so you're a regional prophet. Yeah, I've been here since, okay, all right. So this is your city, this is your town, this is your, and I start naming names of pastors that have fallen into moral decay. I've named pastors who have fallen into places of destruction. I've named pastors, I said, do you know? Oh, yes. Oh, so you're the big prophet. Did God tell you they were in trouble? Why didn't you go to them? How come God sends me from Florida to do your job? I said, boy, you're sitting in the big church. You ain't nothing but a houseboy. You're not taking care of a region. You're not taking care of any pastors. You haven't redeemed anybody. Who do you think? I said, you ain't nothing but a houseboy. Well, I don't think we'll ever be friends. I should care. See, here's the problem is I have no problem telling him and giving him my resume of who I've redeemed in that community by the nature of redeeming. But he's still my brother, and I made an enemy. Is what I did good? Yeah. But the way I present it was in his face. Take some boudin. I don't care if you like breakfast or not. We're from Louisiana. You know, why? That's just offensive. That's that belt of truth. It's detonate from a distance. I'm saying that makes me a terrorist. Everything I said was true, but I used it to offend. I used it to insult. Instead of repackaging it and saying, bro, I need your help. There's some people in your region that God has sent me to. I said, listen, brother so-and-so, yeah, I've been sending him money. You think he would have gone, really? It was in his region. It was under his nose. Instead, I used it to offend. That is not washing the feet of my brother. That is competition among the brothers. And if in that situation, this guy's older than me, been there doing it longer than me, but in that situation, because of the information, I actually was the older brother. Why? I was performing at a regional level that he had never seen, because he was religiously bound in a denomination and claimed to be a regional guy. You can't be a denominational guy and a regional guy unless you understand kingdom. If you hold to your regional line, it means everybody's going to get saved and become just like you. Great. That's why there's 12 tribes. You're a ding-dong. It's not going to work that way. That's not regional. That's not kingdom. That's not brotherhood. I'm reading all these books on terrorists. Al-Qaeda hates Hamas. And Hamas they don't like each other. I'm like, my Lord, they're worse than the church. They fight. And you know what everybody's looking for? Money. The money man. How many people are in ministry? I got this great vision from God. I got it all. And I just need money. If this rich businessman would come to my church, we could fulfill our vision. We just need money. It doesn't change. The terrorists need money. Churches need money. Ecclesiastes 10:19 says, wine is for Mary, food is for joy, but money answers everything. The terrorists need money. The churches need money. Why? Money is influence. I'm telling you, we'll have the money if we start loving our brothers. If we quit prostituting the kings in the marketplace and actually become brothers instead of prophets to them. Because if I'm a prophet to you, I'm going to speak for God, and when you disobey me, me and God hate you. It's what we do. Well, brother, I haven't seen so-and-so. What's going on with him in his church? Well, I gave him a word, brother. He disobeyed the word, and God killed him. So, okay, God used you to give them a word of instruction or correction. How did you pray that? Been there, done that. God, how come it took you 13 years to fulfill that word? Well, it took you 13 years to not want to get credit for it. If you'd gone to him as a brother instead of a prophet, the prophet word that the prophet brought would have been my word, not yours. Susan, go to John 13. 34, 35, and for some reason my phone just... A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another. If you have love one for another. As I study the terrorist groups, they understand brotherhood and being brothers better than we do. As I look at my own family with my sisters and situations that need to be fixed, when we're under pressure, we come back to our family roots. When you're under pressure, you come back to your family roots. I think some of the pressure that we're under is that we won't go back to our family roots of who is our older brother. Stephanie, will you come here, please? Yeah, that would be you. I saw something during worship this morning. I verified it with your husband, so I'm really not that prophetic. I'm going to demonstrate this with Stephanie, and I want you to find somebody in this room. I want you to demonstrate what I'm doing with Stephanie. I understand my sonship, and I know you do too. That makes us brothers. But I know you have a brother in the natural. I asked. And I just want to stand in that position and say, if there's anything that the brother position has done to hurt you, wound you, make you feel insecure, please forgive me. But I want to say this to you. I'm proud to be your brother. I release a brother's blessing over you. And I receive you. And I ask that the face of God will shine upon you. If there's anything, any wound, any fear, any hurt that's been caused between your position and a brother's position, I cancel that assignment and I bless you. I receive you. I want you to stand to your feet this morning. I want you to go find a brother in this room. You may be counseling a wound or hurt or an assignment that may be 50 years old. I want you to ask for forgiveness for that has hurt the person. When we say brother, it could be a sister. Tell them you receive them. Ask for forgiveness for anything that was done wrong. Give them a way of escape to where they can't hold things in their heart. And then pronounce a blessing over them. And say, I receive you. And pronounce a blessing. Some of you are going to struggle with that. And when you do, recognize it, stumble through it. I want you to get home with God and say, Holy Spirit, I thank you that you carry the personality of Jesus, my brother. And I want you to stand in your quiet place. I want you to hold Jesus' hand. I want you to ask him to forgive him for what the brothers had did to him. And bless him. And say, I receive you as my brother. I ask you to help me as I come into maturity like you, as you present me to the Father. See, it's time for your older brother to serve you and to teach you how to love. I don't know of any practical way other than that. Luke, come here, please. I know you're going to the Dominican this week to play baseball. You're my brother. And I love you. I receive you as my brother. And I bless you. And I release a brother's blessing. And you have a big brother, and if there's anything he's ever done,
Yes.
we'll take care of him later. But I bless you. This morning, as I was thinking about this, I heard the Lord say, He's sending you to the Dominican because of your love for the game. But you're going to find the love. You're going to seal the deal there. I don't know the entirety of it. But you're pursuing the love of the game because you have the love of the Father. And as you pursue love, I think you'll find it in many dimensions. You wouldn't show me the end results because I'd probably tell you that I'd want credit for it. But I bless you. Stretch your hands toward him. We as a body send you to the Dominican to pursue the love of the game. You've been a professional for years and years and years. Only a man with a love of the game would go do what you're doing. The love of the promise. Yes. The greater is the love of the one who promised it. Amen. And we send you and we bless you. In Jesus' name.
Thank you.
Find somebody to pray over.
Thank you for tuning into today's message from Identity Church. To know more about us, go to identitychurch.net, where you'll find resources such as a calendar, media, and upcoming events. You may also download an app for your mobile device from the Apple App Store or Google Play. Then from your mobile device, you can hear our messages, read from the Bible, take notes, connect with us on the social media, and even pay your tithe. Again, thank you for tuning into today's message from Identity Church.